Save the Semantics, episode 277. It is October 17th, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Also, the premier NBA slash basketball podcast for all of your analysis needs. It's been an alright week. It's been sort of like I think one word to describe this week has been sort of sleepy a little bit, and maybe that's just referring to me. I've felt a little sleepy this week, just a little tired. And I think that when I do wake up in the morning and I'm just kind of like, just kind of going about my day, nothing too crazy, not a whole lot else going on, which is good in a lot of instances. I think it definitely, that sleepy feel sort of carries throughout the day and also the week. So that's kind of my general feeling of this week, for better or for worse. I think mostly for better. It's fine. It's fine as it is. Yeah. Outside of that, as I mentioned, I'll be kind of out for a trip next week, so I probably won't be able to record anything. So today's kind of the day that I'm making up for everything. And what I kind of wanted to do is do, once again, maybe just sort of like a final season preview for the NBA, for the regular season, which comes up next Wednesday or next Tuesday, I believe. On the 22nd is when it starts, which I'm looking forward to, and I'm hoping that I can try to catch at least a little bit of it. But yeah, after this weekend, we're all set and ready to go. All of this kind of, nervous anticipation for the regular season is going to come to a close. Very interested in seeing how certain teams come out. Are there going to be certain teams like the Utah Jazz the last couple of years who have kind of outperformed what their direction, what their franchise direction should be? Possibly. You never know. Or is it going to be a bit more obvious? Is it going to kind of fall in line with everyone's expectations? Are the good teams going to remain good and remain at the top? Are the bad teams going to continue to stay bad? We'll see. So 2 more days of preseason games, wrapping up tomorrow, Friday evening. We have a good handful of games happening pretty much like right now, and some more later tonight. So I will be tuning into those. Always good stuff to catch some more preseason games and just games in general. Like it is sort of, I am kind of in the headspace where I'm just like fiending for actual games at this point, because I think I have a sense, at least for on the side of the Warriors, what to kind of expect. Although I think, next game or next preseason game, they might give us sort of the finalized version of what the starting lineup will be. It might be a thing where, similar to last year, it was Kerr just adjust the starting lineup based on what the opponent is going to be. I'm interested in seeing that. We do have a pretty deep team this year. Deep in terms of just the amount of playable players, right? Again, I want to reiterate, I don't think the roster is enough to push us over the top and push us to a level of contention, but I think it could be a fun team to watch. And we have a lot of solid role players. How well that's gonna mesh together, we'll find out. But we do have good players, so hopefully we get some decent results from this season. But I am interested in seeing at least what the starting lineup is going to look like for opening night, and sort of moving forward, at least in the beginning of the season, right? Is it going to be? Are we just going to keep what we've been doing with Kuminga, Draymond, obviously Steph, and the fifth center position possibly being Looney or Trace Jackson Davis? I kind of want to give the give the props to TJD and allow him to have the starting role. Gives him more confidence. I feel like he really fits into kind of the starting position pretty well. And I guess Wiggins too, right? He's come back. I I am cautiously optimistic for him. I'm really not expecting a ton from Andrew Wiggins this year. It could be, he's had a lot of off court things that have affected him in the last couple of years. So it's sort of understandable where his level of play has, you know, decreased in a lot of instances. I don't know if he'll be able to have a sort of bounce back season this year. But I'm hoping that he can at least contribute to some level, not to the extent of our championship team. I don't think that might be asking too much of him at this point. But if he is at least a competent role player, I think that could be something. You know what I mean? It is also the case where we do have players that can sort of slot into his position, whether it is like a wing player or someone who is like a power forward. Like we can have others come off the bench that can, sort of fit into that role, whether it's a Moses Moody, or I guess you could kind of switch Kaminga into that position if we need to, although it seems that he works better in the front court as opposed to, as a wing player. But we did see Kaminga put up some 3-point shots, and it's looked pretty good. Again, I hope that kind of carries over into the regular season. But there are options. We have a lot of options that we can go with if Wiggins just is sort of playing similarly to what he did last season. So again, cautiously optimistic. I'm not expecting a ton from him, but if he's able to contribute even somewhat, I'll be happy. And we do have players that can kind of fit into that role if needed. So that's kind of what my feeling is at this point. We have one more game against the Lakers tomorrow. I'll see if I'll see if I can tune into that. I'll probably check out some bits and pieces from it. I think I don't know if it's going to be if they're going to be playing full rotations or anything like that, or if they're going to be, essentially it's going to be kind of the curtain call for the for what the actual rotations are going to look like, or if they're just going to go ahead and just have the second and third stringers play the majority of the game. We'll find out. We will find out. Some other news sort of that's kind of popped up within the last week, really yesterday. So Lonzo Ball came back, which is pretty astonishing, and honestly, I'm very happy for him, and I'm very happy for, I guess Bulls fans to some extent. But mostly I'm very happy that he was able to get back on the NBA court, albeit it is just preseason, but he looked good out there. And I think it's really remarkable and incredible that he was able to get kind of this recovery surgery where essentially he had like his knees replaced, which is crazy, right? What the just modern surgical technology, how that works. But I'm just it's great to see him back on the court. I really think that I enjoy kind of these sort of, post injury comebacks. Some are more successful than others. One comes to mind is Sean Livingston, right? His ability to get back from a incredibly severe injury, back when he first started playing with the Clippers, to winning multiple championships with the Warriors, I think is really it's hard to understate. And I'm always that's just like a really great story. And I don't know if Lonzo's his career is gonna pan out that way. He is still pretty young too, so I think there is potential for him to be a good role player. I mean, the way he was playing yesterday, he looked really good. He was making shots. He was moving around. He played great defense. Like it seemed like he, some aspects maybe he looked a little slow, but overall I thought he looked really great for someone who hadn't played in more than like 2 years. So I thought, I don't know, I just thought that was really awesome to see. This sort of lines up. I mean, it's not lines up. Rather, it conflicts a little bit with what exactly the Bulls are gonna do as a franchise moving forward. Last week I believe I mentioned. I was talking about the Hawks and how the Hawks are sort of in a weird spot as well, where it just you don't exactly know what direction they can kind of move forward with in as a franchise. Where do they want to move towards a full rebuild with like a Risa Shea and a Jalen Johnson, trade away Trey Young? Like, is that something that they want to do, or do they want to try to develop those players alongside Trey Young and just kind of remain sort of in that middle tier of middle to kind of lower, play in to lower seeded playoff team? Is that kind of just going to be the goal? And a similar sentiment, I think, I think you can give to the Bulls. Honestly, more so because they didn't get, well, they got Matas Buzelis, who seems to be a pretty good draft pick. But like outside of that, like they traded away DeRozan, and they traded away Caruso for Giddey, which is still a terrible trade. I think everyone can attest to that being one of the worst trades that we've seen in a while. But it's like you see that, and you are just sort of confused as to what the heck they're doing. I might be repeating myself from what I've already said before about the Bulls, but they have all of these veteran players. Essentially, a large chunk of their roster from 3-4 years ago, when they did do those massive offseason moves to get DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso. I think Vucevic was also included in that. And then Lonzo Ball, like all of them, just to kind of group them together. And they were really like incredibly exciting to watch back in like 2021, when they were like the first seed for like a very short stint. They were one of the most exciting teams to watch for that kind of short period, the first half of the season. Unfortunately, that kind of derailed with injuries to Lonzo Ball and Caruso and that kind of thing. So we didn't really see what that team could have been. I do think that team did have a ceiling of sorts. I don't think they were going to be like a championship caliber team, but they could have had some exciting first rounds. But it just didn't pan out that way, unfortunately. So we didn't really get to see that. And ever since, I think the front office has really just sort of held on to that hope. The hope that they will somehow get into a playoff contending team with this roster. And it's just like they did trade away kind of there's some of their key pieces with DeRozan and Caruso, but it's like they're not going all the way. They're not going all the way. And I think it's sort of unfortunate too, because it is such like a great success story to see Lonzo get back on the court, but also it kind of conflicts with what, the direction that this franchise should most likely be going in, which is a rebuilding franchise with their younger pieces, trade away the vets on the team to get back draft capital, all that stuff, right? But it's like there's this kind of like sentiment, there's almost this like emotion attached, this feeling attached, kind of like a longing, a desire for this to work, because it just hasn't worked at all. It has been consistently lower seeded or play-in team in the last couple of years, right? So what is going to be, what are they going to do there? Are they just going to keep butting their head against the wall and trying to do the same thing over again? Unfortunately, it kind of seems that way. And I think that I don't know how much the Lonzo coming back affects their decision making, but I have a feeling that it does have something to do with it. It does affect them a little bit. They're like, now we have him back. So for now we can finally make some noise in the Eastern Conference. And it's like it just is not enough. And I think I don't think it's gonna happen at all. But it is sort of like it's honestly like if Lonzo is able to continue to play the way he does, it is like a perfect time to try to trade. I don't know what his trade clauses are, if he's even able to be traded or whatever. I'm not entirely sure if he's locked down. If he's already opted into like some sort of extension, I don't really know what that situation is like, but it's like, listen, if he's able to showcase himself as a still competent and really good role player as a maybe like a second point guard off the bench, I think a lot of teams are going to look at that and want to, maybe they're calling up Chicago. Just the unfortunate thing is that it would be a little it's sort of inconsistent with what the decision making of the Bulls front office has been, which is essentially just stick to what they think is good, which is not good. It's just the most middle of the road team that you can kind of imagine outside of maybe the Hawks, right? And so it's just it's sort of I don't know. I don't know. And I'm also I saw some comments, I watched, parts of the game where, of that Wolves game from yesterday. I also watched like the highlights of Lonzo coming back. I was reading some of the comments, reading some like the Reddit threads and whatnot. And it's like, people are like, yes, excited. And which is awesome. I think it's great to see people, kind of get back on board with Lonzo and everything. But I just feel that some of that is a bit misguided in terms of like, hoping that he will contribute to them being like a winning playoff team is just a little too much to ask of someone who hasn't played in like 2 years, right? And then on top of that, it's not gonna be enough for them to be a competitive team. It's just not. It really isn't. And like the direction that they should go this year, especially when it's considered as like, similar to what the Wembanyama that draft looked like, this upcoming year and the next like couple of years are going to have some of the best like prospects, draft prospects that we've seen in quite some time. And that's like the perfect opportunity to try to get someone like Cooper Flagg. But they're just not going to do that. They're just not going to do that. And it's like, I understand. I understand this want to, really make something work. But it's been just shown over and over that the combination of players that they have at their disposal is not good enough to get them to a place where they want to be. So I feel the best direction, and I think this has been hammered home by many people, that they should go towards a rebuilding process and tank. But it's just not going to happen, I don't think, which sucks because it's like, I'm not even like a Bulls fan, but I feel for people that for Chicago fans. Like I really do feel for them because they are sort of in this kind of weird, like nebulous situation where there is just stuck in kind of purgatory of sorts. And And I like seeing success stories outside of my own team as well. Except if it's like, like a team I don't really care about too much, like the Lakers or whatever. But I like seeing, I know the Bulls aren't exactly like an underdog franchise. Of course, they had Jordan and everything, but at this point, right now, they are like two decades removed, 3 decades removed from the Jordan period. Really, the only viable success that they've had was during the Rose years, and even that was a pretty short amount of time. So they are. I feel right now they can be considered as one of the more, not as successful franchises in the last decade plus or so. So I want to see them be a competitive team. I think it'll be fun to see teams like them in the West get to a position of competition, because the East rather, because the East is like so weak, and I want to see the same level of competition there is in the East versus the West. That just the quality of teams is just not the same. And it's like they just don't have a direction, and it kind of sucks because I thought that with the DeRozan trade, it seemed like they were going towards that, but I don't know. Maybe they'll make moves during the season. Maybe at the midseason trade deadline, they'll do something. But it just doesn't feel like there's anything there. And I don't know. I really do believe there is some emotion attached to that, to the lack of decision making or just the lack of movement in general, because they're still clinging on to this hope that this like core, which doesn't even have two of the main players because they already traded them away. It's like a half measure, right? And it's sort of frustrating to watch because I don't know. It's like I just want to see other teams to their calibers succeed, because I've seen some really great stuff from them in the past. And I feel like they can be an exciting team again. So I don't know. That's a whole spiel about Lonzo Ball and the Bulls. I'm really happy that he came back on the court. If they're I don't know what the Bulls are, man. If they're like a fun team, sure, but I think for the sake of the franchise and their fans, they should really find a direction, which is rebuilding. Go into the draft, get some good players there, and do something with that. Trade away Zach LaVine and Vucevic and everything, and Lonzo Ball too, if you're able to. But yeah, there's I'm seeing, I'm looking at some other teams that could be interesting. I already talked about the Hawks last week. I think I touched upon the Pistons a little bit too. But I'm intrigued to see what those kind of teams that do take a leap, which ones those are. Because last year you can clearly look at like the Thunder, the Pacers, the Magic. Those are kind of the ones that come to mind in terms of like the younger teams making a significant leap and becoming playoff contenders and title contenders or whatever. And I'm interested in seeing if there are any other teams that could potentially make that leap. I don't think it's going to be to the same extent, and there's probably going to be less teams because of just the continuity from those other younger teams that have already made that jump. I think one team that does come to mind that could sort of maybe sneak into like a playoff position when they weren't in one last year is the Houston Rockets. They're a pretty interesting team. They were right on the heels of the Warriors for the final play-in position, and they fell a little short. But if they are able to kind of continue to develop their younger players, and just sort of build on that. I could see them being, a bit of a sleeper team. I don't know. It seems like they could make some sort of leap. I don't know what their position is in comparison to other teams in like the bottom, you know, the bottom part of the playoff bracket, and the play-in section, like compared to the Lakers or the Warriors. I think you can probably throw the Clippers in there this year, and the Pelicans and the Kings, like all of those teams. Like I think they could be sort of in that mix, for like a play-in spot. I think that's probably their goal this year. They were trying their best to gun for it last year when they had their crazy win streak, and I could see them being pretty competitive this year as well. I don't know how well they will fare against the rest of the Western Conference, but I'd say they are better than a handful of teams. They feel. I think I would still put our Warriors like a little above them right now, but it's not that much of a distance, right? I think they have some quality role players. Jalen Green and Şengün are going to be just a year better. We'll see how well those two will actually kind of work together in tandem. If it's going to be if that's going to be like the duo moving forward. But it's a very interesting team. I'm not going to be like cheering for them because they are in contention with the Warriors, of course. But I'll be keeping my eye on them. I'll definitely be keeping my eye on them. I Yeah, I don't know. I'm just very excited to see actual basketball coming right up. There's only so much speculation that you can put into preseason, right? At a certain point, it's like, wow, look at that. Like you can maybe take away some things for sure, but I just don't know how much. It's like until you see some actual minutes and actual rotations, it's really not a ton that you can kind of gather from it, because it's like I think someone made a pretty good point about preseason. It's like, what is like a memorable preseason player and did that translate to actual NBA play? It's like I just can't really think of that. It's like you can probably think of players that had poor preseasons, like rookies, and then they actually excelled when it came to the regular season, but it's really hard to tell, honestly. So just gonna I think that's pretty much all I have in terms of preview and everything like that. I just can't wait for the season and what's coming up. Speaking of just sports in general, and basketball too. So the women's NBA finals is right now, and not right like right now, but it's been happening for like a week. And sort of in between games or like preseason games, I had completely forgotten that there was a WNBA game happening yesterday, and I tuned into it, and it was great. Honestly, like the last, I've been able to tune in to like the 3 games, and each of them have been really exciting. A lot of people are saying that it's better than what the NBA finals were because just the level of competition. Both teams are pretty evenly matched. And I've had just a great time watching them. Yesterday's game in particular, had a Sabrina Ionescu. She hit like a game-winning three, almost right at the buzzer, and it was that was something. that was crazy to watch in real time. I basically like tuned in at like I mean I watched like a decent chunk of the game, but then I had to like take care of something, and then I came back, and there was like a minute left in the game, and then all the crazy shenanigans happened. But these games have been really exciting. Again, super evenly matched. If New York, it's the New York Liberty versus the Minnesota Lynx. If New York does win, this will be their first championship, which is pretty cool. I think if Minnesota wins, this will be like their fifth or sixth, which is pretty crazy. But it's best of five. So if they do win the next one, if New York wins the next one, then that will be the series. But I'm hoping it goes to five because these games have been really exciting. All of them have been like close, like less than 10 points at the very least. Just good stuff. And yeah, I hope that I know, and I know this is it's just different, but I hope that next year's NBA Finals, whatever teams are going to be there, will have the same level of competition the WNBA Finals has, because I think we're severely lacking. We've been missing that for the last couple of seasons. Just sort of, and it really just is. It's nobody's fault. It just happens to be what the matchups were. But hopefully the matchups are a bit more even, and we get like at least like a 6-7 game series. I think that will be good. Really, the most exciting series from last year's playoffs was the Knicks and the Sixers, and that was in the first round. And I guess maybe the Wolves and the Nuggets was the next one, but even that series it was really just Game 7 was the most exciting. The rest of the series, there was just like kind of blowouts after blowouts, which was really weird. But yeah, it just hopefully we get a bit more healthy competition across the board for each of the series, and then. But we're talking so far ahead. It's so much further down the line. We have regular season basketball coming around the corner, and let's get excited for that. We can think about the playoffs like once they come around. It's fun to kind of to think about though. Anyways, yeah, that's probably gonna do it for today. Just kind of wanted to do a final bit of some topics that came up. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but this is like a small thing that happened this past weekend with the Europa Clipper that launched. I watched the live stream of it in the morning of when the launch happened, and it was really exciting and really cool to see all that. And Europa, the Clipper is going to be at Europa in 2030. So it sounds far, but like I've said, it's really not going to be that far. Time goes by pretty quickly, so we'll be there, and before we know it, and I'll be like 30 something. I can't do the math right now, but it's cool. That's pretty cool. It's just sort of once I hit my 30s, I get to see a potential that there is life outside of our Earth, and the potential for there to be life within our own very own solar system. That's really cool. So just getting that, I think, would be pretty awesome. And yeah, I'm excited to 6 years down the line, we'll see kind of what that looks like. What kind of creatures are living under the moon's surface. Cool stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to make note of that. I know that I haven't really been talking about some gaming stuff. It's been pretty quiet on that front. I mean, there has been some weird Nintendo stuff but I honestly have just not cared about that. They had like a playtest thing that they put out, but it just was like, okay, I don't know what that is. There's like Pokemon leaks. Don't really care about that. Yeah, we're just waiting for Switch 2, and as time goes along, I don't know how I'm feeling about the October date. I still feel decent about it, but it has just been just nothing. It's really been nothing. So I'm feeling a bit more wary day by day as we draw closer to the end of October. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll keep an eye out on that, of course. And I'll talk about that once that eventually does get revealed. But yeah, that's going to be it for today and this week's episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.